So, welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today, we're taking a look at Battle of Britain. And this is new from PSC Games. And PSC stands for Plastic Soldier Company. It's a company based out of the UK. And normally they make scale models, like a lot of 15mm and 28mm wargame miniatures.
Yeah, plastic soldiers, right?
Yeah, I use a lot of their stuff for Flames of War. You can use it for Warlord games. What is it called? They have a 28mm size game. I forget what it's called. Bolt Action. That's what it is. I think it can be used for that. But they make literally toy soldiers and scale model tanks and other AFVs and aircraft. Well, they've recently started branching out in the past few years into kind of board games or war games, and this is one of them. This is Battle of Britain. Did this come out just this year, or was it last year? Last year.
Last year.
So we were able to get a hold of a copy of it, and as you can see, it is the Battle of Britain. This is a 2-player game. It advertises that it can play 3 and 4, but this is a 2-player game.
Yeah. You theoretically could play it 3 or 4, but
you just
what ends up happening is you're just carving up. You take care of section 10 and 13, and I don't know that that's great.
It's not, it is what it is. But 2-player game, it's really fun.
Great little game.
Yeah, it's not super duper heavy. It's not super duper crunchy. This is a pretty good introductory war game type thing as well.
I would agree with
Most
that. Most
board game players could pick this up very easily.
And even grognards, I think, can be interested in this.
Yes.
Because it is the air war, right? And there are some neat elements about it that we'll talk about. Kept my interest for 2 hours. I enjoyed it. I would love to play again.
Yes.
I'd love to play a longer campaign or one of the later campaigns to see how the effects of the damage from the Germans affects the RAF, because I think we were just really getting into that.
Yeah, this is a game where the game comes with 3 different scenarios, and it's different stages of the conflict, and then you can kind of stitch them all together for a long campaign where you keep the scores as an aggregate, but each new scenario sets up differently to represent what's already happened. So there is a good campaign where you can get a good arc for a story, but playing just a straight game from start to finish was very fun and had its own cool story to tell. So that was something that was really neat that I don't feel like I was missing out.
No.
And in a lot of Battle of Britain games, I feel like you got to play the whole campaign to get the whole story and the feel of it. Because usually if you do I'm just going to play one day and you have this deep complex game, that's great, but you miss out on really what the conflict was about, which is that it was this sustained attacks over the course of time, and what the British and all the other Commonwealth and Allied fighters that kind of helped, everything they went through to withstand what they did.
Right.
So this one actually does a pretty decent job of doing that in 2 hours. I was surprised by that. I thought it was very, very neat.
Well, I felt like at the end of each turn, I was worried and concerned about what I could fix and repair. Early in the game, I didn't worry so much that I had a couple damaged fighters, but I did worry about those radar nets. So I thought that was cool. And then later in round 4, I had quite a few shot down fighters. I was starting to worry about how am I going to muster enough power to withstand your BF-109s, and that was fun. I found that tension to be very, very fun.
Yes, there's some good kind of randomness and chaos in the game as well, from a standpoint of the composition of your flights. And that was something I thought was pretty interesting when we talked to someone at Gen Con about this game. They were demoing it and kind of went through that. And that was something that really intrigued me, is that, my German flights, I have no idea what they're composed of.
Right.
Because they're kind of dealt face down. And so I'm kind of flying my guys up towards their target, and then we get into a fight with the RAF, and it's a case of, let's see what I have to fight with.
Well, and even more so than that, when we end up fighting, the RAF gets to select 3 random cards from your hand. So you may have 3 good dogfighting cards, but you may also have 3 bombers, and if I pull all the bombers, guess what? I'm going to shoot them all down.
Yes.
And I really liked that element. I thought that was very cool.
And that was the same for you, though, as well. It's slightly less variance.
Yeah, I had 3 cards, so it wasn't a matter of choosing them.
But
it was a matter of choosing reinforcements.
But there were times you'd kind of pull them up, and you're like, oh, crap.
Right, because I didn't
know. I've got a Robin
know.
Defiant, I've got a Gladiator, I've got Blenheim in there, which are much, much weaker
They're terrible.
than the Spitfires and the Hurricanes that you're fighting with. So you've got this little surprise element of what am I ended up fighting with. So that's a really fun kind of a random aspect to it that it keeps it fun.
Yeah.
And it keeps it less like, I'll go for it.
Well, it keeps you on that knife's edge. It keeps you on that edge of, can I really do what I want to do?
Yeah, a little bit of push your luck kind of in that way of like, well, I'm just going to go for it. Now, the game in the combat resolution is kind of a bucket of dice type thing. Each card in your flight, you have anywhere from 3 to 6, has a combat value in it, and you just roll X amount of dice. And so you end up chucking a ton of dice, and these are custom dice with German crosses and British rondelles on them. And it's how many hits do you do, how many hits do you take, and depending on which type of combat, that affects the outcome. You're going to lose cards that get shot down on both sides. But it's moving guys, chucking a bunch of dice. Hopefully the Germans are trying to break through these lines, get to their targets, hopefully somewhat intact. And then they have a little sub-phase where they go on bombing runs, where they're chucking a bunch of bombing dice. And do you destroy your targets? The Germans, in a lot of Battle of Britain games, there's, a secret planning board where it's like, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do here. In this one, you have a small deck of cards. There's a ton of these. And they each represent...
a mission.
Yeah, cities, airfields, radar stations on the board. And you draw them, and then you get to assign them to your flights. But you're limited to what you have, which is something... At first I was like, this sucks. Because I drew some really unfavorable missions. I had a lot of missions up in the north of England. I had to go bomb cities up in like Newcastle and Middlesbrough. And I'm like...
And you only have one flight, right? And Luftflotte 5. So if you had 3 or 4 of those, that's bad.
And I'm trying to bring up Luftflotte 2 and 3 up around the North Sea. To do that takes a lot of time, a lot of fuel to bomb some cities which don't necessarily affect tactically the game down here where a majority of this is happening. So that was very, very interesting. But then we talked about that where it's the Fuhrer's orders. He wants this place bombed.
You must bomb Nottingham.
You got to go and
do it.
And it's tactically insanely inefficient, absolutely suboptimal, but you got to go do it. You got to do what they say. So there were times where you kind of forced into some situations where you're like, oh man, okay, I guess we're just going to go for it. But then a lot of them are much more reasonable targets where you could just pop across the channel, do a couple runs. So Luftflotte 2 and 3 down on the North French coast, they'll often do 2 or 3 missions in a 4-turn game. If you have to start going over into the north of England, usually takes a couple turns to get there and do it. So Luftflotte 5 gonna typically do less, achieve fewer missions.
Well, they only have one flight. They literally only have one flight. Everybody else has at least 3. Right, 3 and 3.
And achieving the missions, that's kind of the goal of the Luftwaffe.
That's how you score points.
Each mission card they achieve is a point, and then for all the damage they do on the board that's unrepaired by the end of the game, which can be a lot, those are worth points as well as kind of shooting down enemy aircraft. For the RAF, you just try to kill planes, basically. And
become ace. Get ace pilots.
Which you do by killing planes, right?
And at one time, I had 3 ace pilots, and ended up having a bad run of luck, and those ace pilots ended up going into the English Channel, which was not good.
In the very last round, at least 2 of them went down, right?
Yeah, that was bad.
That was a bad time. But that's a lot of what the game is. What we'll do is I'm going to show you a little bit closer about how the game plays, what the board's going to kind of look like. There's a lot of stuff here you can see. Then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's kind of a quick look at the board. As you can see, the German player, they have kind of 3 big play aids and kind of storage mats. And these are for Luftflotte 2, 3, and 5. And they have their respective areas here in France, 2, 3, and 5 up here in Norway. And then you've got the British player RAF, they've got 4 different cards for 10, 11, 12, and 13 group. Again, you can see the UK's kind of carved up 10, 11, 12, and 13 group up there. And each of these has like a little holding box. So Luftflotte 2 has A flight, B flight, C flight. Luftflotte 3's got A, B, and C. Luftflotte 5 is small. They only have 1 flight. And again, the British are divided up into various numbers as well. 11 group has 4 flights because they kind of took the brunt of it. 13 flight or 13 group up in the north of England and Scotland has only 2 flights. But these what kind of each of these flights are composed of. Because you got these great little standees. I'm just kind of show you these awesome little plastic standees. And they have a designation sticker on them. So this one's Luftflotte 2, and this is C flight. So let's say we have C flight here, and this goes down here. But then you get some, here you got big Heinkel. I think we're going to compare that in size to the 109 here. These are just cool. Just bling. Those are nice. The planes themselves are meaningless because the unit composition is based on these cards here. So A flight of Luftflotte 2, which is this Heinkel over here, really it's composed of these 6 cards, which are face down. So it's really, you've got a 109 squadron, Heinkel squadron, 110, 2 110 squadrons, and a squadron of Stukas as well. So this is all the stuff you have kind of in. This is what's represented by this single guy here. And they are attempting to go to this mission. And this mission is they're trying to bomb this city of, let's get this in focus. They're trying to bomb Bristol. That's what they're trying to do. There you go, Bristol. So as you can see, they're kind of making their way up the board here, and Bristol is up here. And basically, you can see they have this little track with fuel counters. Each flight starts with 3 fuel counters. You spend 1 during the move phase, and you can move 5 spaces. So what they're trying to do is move 1, 2, boards divided up into squares. They're trying to move up to Bristol. Great. They've successfully moved up to Bristol. So when they move there, they're going to place their bombing run marker to indicate that's what they're going to try and do. Basically, the German player does all of their moves like that. Again, all trying to move towards their various mission cards. All trying to get to where they're going. And then the RAF player gets to move. And they're trying to kind of get their fighters into shooting down. So this guy, he's going to move the Spitfires and Hurricanes. The RAF flights can move 3 spaces only. Germans can move 5, so they get a bit more freedom there. 1, 2, 3. He can move in there. And then he's going to spend 1 of his limited dogfight counters to do a dogfight. So he's going to stick this in here. So as you can see, this is kind of it can be a little bit crowded at times. A lot of different counters going on here. But it's easy enough to sort out because you do it and you know what you're doing. So there's going to be a dogfight there. You know, and it's the same stuff. These guys are going to move down. You move in, do as many dogfights as possible. But the important part is for example, when this guy, he's going to leave his airbase. Let's see, C flight. He's heading towards Hull. Hull's way up in the north of England here. So he's just going to go for it. Doesn't matter. He's going to spend 2 fuel counters because that you can do that. You can spend 2 instead of 1 to go 10 spaces. And he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now he's only 1 space away, but he only has 1 fuel counter left. That's important because he's going to expend it next turn actually getting to Hull, and then he's going to have no fuel for the return flight home. Now, you can always make it home, but you're going to roll dice when you have no fuel counters because you might just fall out of the sky, you might get shot down. It's harder for you to get home with no fuel. The important part here is as soon as he moved in, this is a radar net here in Moldmels. As soon as he moves into these kind of black lines, he has to stop here because he triggers and he gets this detection. The radar net detects them coming, and as soon as he does that, the British player has the option to intercept them. This one was a dogfight because the RAF player moved in on their turn, so to speak. This guy kind of interrupts the German movement turn. He says, I'm going to intercept you. And it's a different counter. So he can move a guy 3 spaces, 1, 2. He's going to move up and do intercept. It's just a different style of combat resolution. But that's what's going to happen here. It's Germans do all their moves. Some of them get intercepted. And then the RAF do all their moves and initiate dogfights where they haven't done interceptions, basically. Now, to resolve combat, there's those 2 different types of combat. This intercept combat, we'll kind of start here because you'll do a lot of that early game. Intercept combat, I take all of my 6 cards, if you're full strength, from Sea Flight, and we don't look at them. This is where the intercept is very potent. We randomly choose 3, so we'll choose these 3, and these ones kind of get put back. Oh, wow. These are the fighters that are going to engage from the German side in the fight. Now, imagine to yourself, you'd pulled, oh wow, these are all a lot of 109s. So if you pull something like this, well now I've got, if this was what I was fighting against, this is the combat value in the top 4, 5, 6. I'm going to roll 6 dice as the Germans, as opposed to rolling 12 dice if you'd pulled all those fighters. So Germans are going to roll 6 dice in this combat, and then the British, it's 12 group A flight, so they're going to pull they only have 3 cards, that's the maximum they can have. And they've got, wow, they also have a terrible, terrible hand. So they have 4, 5, 6 dice as well. If these are 2 other Spitfires, again, they're going to roll 12. And that's much more typical. This is very, very bad. Basically, with 6 dice apiece, you just roll off and you do damage. The Germans roll the black dice, hoping to get rondels, which they get 4 rondels. That's great. But they also get 2 German crosses. Very bad. RAF rolls trying to get German crosses. They get 2 German crosses, 3 nothings, and a rondel. Also very bad. So each of these dice has 2 hit symbols, or 3 hit symbols for themselves, and 1 where they kind of damage their own unit. So that's very bad. So here, the RAF player has to take 5 hits. And this is where you consult these red damage values. So this Spitfire can absorb 4 of those 5 hits, and then you've got to kill one of these other ones, because someone has to take the last hit, so you're going to have 2 damaged ones. And you would do that because if you kill both these guys, you still have to take one on here, and he's going to be damaged. There's no kind of, you don't get shortchanged, you have to damage them all. So we're going to lose a Spitfire and a Bristol Blenheim. Those go into the damaged pile. If they stay there to the end of the game, that's a victory point apiece to the German player. This one stays alive. He's going to kind of go back to his flight. And then the German player has to take 4 hits. Well, in this instance, we've got some choice. We're just going to lose that 109. He's permanently destroyed. He goes into this destroyed box all the way up here. Can never get him back. He can never be repaired. So that's kind of the attrition that you see in the Battle of Britain. And these 2 bombers are going to go on their merry way. So these go back into this holding box here. We're going to flip those back over. Now, that's intercept combat. It's really, really that easy. At this point, the RAF player has the option to go back home. And we know they only have 1 Bristol Blenheim. That's terrible. So they have the option to go home. He's going to go home. Let's see. Yeah, he's going to go home. Nope, it was this guy. It was 12. It was A group. That's what it was. But yeah, he's gonna go back so that he can kind of rearm and regroup and get back up to full strength, so that he could fight again another day. He's not totally wiped out. The Germans do have an option to break off if they're in terrible shape, but this is pretty decent. He's only 1 space away from Hull, so next round he's going to be able to do a good bombing run. And we know we were able to keep one of those bombers. That was very nice, or 2 of those bombers. So we know we're going to have a good chance at doing some damage to Hull. For dogfighting, which we were doing over here in Bristol, the combat resolution's a little bit different. So in this one, everyone picks up their cards And we have, it's Luftwaffe 2, it's A flight. So here, the Germans pick up their 6 cards, and they get to choose which cards engage in combat. But they only choose one. And you fight one at a time against one at a time of the enemy. So we're going to start with the 109, because it gives us kind of the best shot here. So we're going to do a 109, and we're fighting against 10 flights B group. Uh-oh. B group only has 2 cards. One of them was shot down earlier, so they're going to look and choose one of theirs. And they have a Hurricane, which rolls 3 attack dice, or a Spitfire that does 4 attack dice. So we'll go with the Spits, because we figure, and this is done blindly, but we figure that's probably going to be our best option. So these guys are revealed, that's what we're fighting against. And this one is different. You remember in the Intercept combat, everyone chucks dice and everyone dies. It's pretty bad. In this one, you only roll, so you roll dice equal to what you have, but only one side might get shot down. So we're just going to roll these and see what happens. So it's a disaster for the Germans. So there's 3 German crosses, and there's 1 rondel. And again, in a dogfight, the side with the most hits is what might get shot down. The British come off fine. They're not in danger of getting shot down. Now, because there was not enough, so there's only 3 hits, that's not enough to overcome this value here. That means nothing happens. Basically, they engage in the dogfight, they're fighting off away, these kind of get put face back down into their respective flights. And you just go again. So these guys only have their Hurricanes left. German's got a whole hand to choose from. So he's going to put in his BF 110, because that rolls 3 dice and has 2 hit points, so might be able to take out a Hurricane here with a lucky roll. So we have 3 German dice, and we have 3 English dice. I'm going to kind of roll off. Unfortunately, it doesn't go well this time. So, again, the Germans have the most. They might get shot down. 3 exceeds the 2 threshold that we had here on this card. So he's going to get shot down. Permanently destroyed over here. That's a victory for this guy. He keeps fighting, and then I keep pulling out the next one, and a dogfight keeps going until one side's dead or out of the fight. So we're going to pull out our last 110. Hopefully we don't have to dogfight with our bombers. That's very bad. So we're going to do 3 apiece one more time. Oh, and it's a disaster for the English. So the Hurricane gets shot down, and he's damaged in the damage box. And the good news here is the English players got nothing left. So these get to go back to their flight box and carry on their merry way. Well, what happens now is, so this guy, there's nothing. So A flight can optionally break off. It was B flight, I believe. So he's going to break off so that he can rearm and refuel later. And these guys are going to now do their bombing run. So we consult back to what we had, which was these guys. I had in here, so we have a 109, a Junkers 88, oh, a Stuka, alright, so they can't fight. So here we're looking at the bomb value, which is in this bottom right hand corner. So we have 2 Henkels and a Stuka. If a Stuka's attacking an airfield or a radar net, they get a +1 because they were an accurate dive bomber, but we're just carpet bombing Bristol at this point, so we're going to roll 5 bomb dice. And to destroy a city, if you kind of look here, trying to bomb Bristol, we need 3 hits to knock it out. So we've got 3, 4, 5. All we're looking for is rondels on my German dice. And we did 3, which is very good, because we knock it out. So Bristol gets one of these knocked out markers, and these go, one goes on the board to kind of note that that was done, and the other one goes up on this track up here. Bristol takes the damage. And I'm going to kind of show you that here in a little bit. That track is a production track, and it has a space for each of the cities and radar nets. And each of the cities has a value, which is also printed on this card. This has a 2 production value. And the production value indicates how many dice you can roll to try and repair and replace British fighters or radar nets or airfields, things like that. So we did successfully complete this mission. So not only do I get 3 points for having destroyed Bristol, I also get this card kind of in a victory display. That's worth 1 extra victory point there. And then the last thing that happens is because I rolled 2 crosses in my bombing run, the English player gets to roll anti-aircraft. So for each cross you roll 2 dice, and you're hoping to get German crosses. If you roll 2 crosses, I think you get to shoot down one of these bombers kind of on the way out. But it was only 1, so I think we get off scot-free there. But that's basically how that gets going with combat. And then, because he achieved his objective, he gets to fly home. Now, the important part with flying home is you get to fly home if you have this fuel here. A bomber gets to fly home, no problem, on 1 fuel. The fighters, though, because they have 1 fuel, they might not make it home. So we roll a German dice apiece. And if you roll any crosses, so 109 is fine, 110 doesn't make it home. There's a 1 in 6 chance of that happening. BF 110 doesn't make it home. He's destroyed forever. He ran out of fuel and crashed or was shot down on the way home. So that's pretty sad. So that's really important to gauge your fuel and where you're at with things and how that's going to end up going. But that's a lot of how at least movement and combat works. You do that kind of 4 times with everyone, getting new missions. The Germans have this huge stack of cards, which seems big, but will run out very quickly. They can restack their flights when they go home. The English and the RAF don't have a lot in some of these places. They need to spend points to repair these to get them combat ready, so they can rearm their flights. To do that at the beginning of each phase, you consult this track, and I'm just going to bring this down so we can see it. Hopefully I don't mess it up. Ooh. So this track here, this is kind of the production and German targeting track. Again, you can see the numbers here. So what happens is you start with 10 group. This is the amount of dice that you roll. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Before, it was 9. But we destroyed Bristol, so that's factories out of action, that kind of stuff. So they're going to roll 7 dice. So they're going to roll 7 white dice, hoping for rondelles. So we got 1, 1. So they get 1 production point to spend with 10 group. 10 group down here, you can use it to repair a single radar net, to repair a single airfield, or to repair a single aircraft from this. Our flights are very thin, so we're actually going to choose to repair... Ooh, those are not good. We're going to repair a Hurricane, so he's combat ready, so we can refill B flights so that they're at least at some combat strength. And then you go down the line to 11 group, who only have 5 dice to roll. Things get pretty hairy when you start getting bombs dropped on London. Luckily, they rolled 2 rondelles, so they look at getting things repaired. So they might look at getting this guy repaired. They might repair a radar net there, and that's pretty much how the game goes with the attritional nature. You do that over and over and over again. You do it for 4 turns, and the game's over. So that's kind of at least a glance at how the game works. What we'll do is we're just going to wrap up with some final thoughts here. So that's a look at the board and everything, at least most of it, that the game entails. So to kind of wrap up, what's some things that you really enjoyed about this game?
Yeah, so I really, as the RAF, I really enjoyed the decisions I had to make between when my radar net would detect or ping the incoming Germans. I had to make a decision: do I jump them and intercept them, or do I wait and then try to dogfight them later on? I found, and once again after one play, I felt like intercept was better, because if I pulled the right cards randomly from your flight, I could pull a bunch of bombers and shoot them down very easily, scoring a bunch of points, and not really taking much damage from them.
And it nullifies my ability to
finish your mission
goal by doing good bombing.
If you have no bombers, or if you even only have 1 bomber with 1 or 2 dice, you're not going to be able to complete your missions. So I liked that decision point. The other thing I found very interesting about the game was what fighters you had in your flights. You know, I knew I had a Defiant that was only a one dogfight guy. I had a Goliath that was bad. So I worried about that stack. So I had to make sure and not use that stack as much, but there came a time where I had to use that stack. So it's a matter of managing those resources, trying to understand what you can and cannot do, and then do that well. In the end, I came out victorious because I shot down 39 of your planes. You scored 37 points from missions and damage and shooting my plane or damaging my planes. So had I not pulled some of those cards early on and shot those bombers down, it would have been a totally different game.
Yeah, and we kind of took a look at this damage track that's just off camera here.
I liked that part as well.
Yeah, it was a really easy way to resolve all of that stuff and to keep a track of it. And I felt like by the end of the 4th round, which is the end of the game, I was finally in a position where I really had a stranglehold on the RAF, and unfortunately the game ended.
It would be interesting to know that tipping point where they decided what, the game's 4 rounds versus 5 rounds.
Yes.
Because I really think if you looked at that board, it was to the point where it was going to be very tough for me to roll many dice and get many repairs. So that was not going to change.
And you had a lot of aircraft down.
So it was a matter of
a lot of damage on the board.
I'm going to have to make decisions about, do I get my aircraft back up to fight, or do I take care of some of like the radar nets and some of that? You can't repair damage to cities.
Yeah.
And that's hard because that covers up those dice that I can roll. I like that part. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, and that's a really nice way of taking care of that, because it was hard enough to roll those rondelles.
Well, yeah, and on my dice, I have 2 rondelles out of 6 sides. 2 blanks, and I think...
Just 1 rondelle.
Is it just 1 rondelle?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's very hard to roll. Very hard to roll. But I like that, and I remember at the beginning of the game, I didn't understand, because I was rolling like 10 dice, and I'm like, I repaired everything. But the reality is I was very fortunate the first round. The second, third, and fourth round, I took a lot more losses, and I was unable to keep up and repair, which I liked that. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. It's nice having the little planes moving around. That's always fun, right?
Yeah. And they're nice little models. They're
nice.
Hurricanes and Spitfires, and then you have Heinkels, Ju-88s, and what's the other?
There were Dorniers, Junkers 88s, Heinkels, and 109s.
109s.
There might be some... Is there 110s in this one? No. But yeah, it's
great little
It's
models.
Cool. The planes themselves are meaningless, other than... They're all the same because your unit composition's in these stacks.
Right.
But it would be really easy to paint these and make it look really, really nice.
Are you offering to do that?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Because they would look really sharp painted up.
It was really a little bit crowded at times because like the Heinkels are massive and you're trying to cram in some counters and a big Heinkel and the enemy stuff there.
Yeah.
So there are times where it gets a little bit squashed.
And I think that's really my only real concern with this game. Production value is really nice.
Yeah.
These cards are way too big for what you need.
Yeah.
I felt like they needed some extra boxes for like the ace tokens. I felt like the map, while it's huge, that's a huge map. I felt like it was very, very crowded.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure if that's just the missions you got. Had your missions been different, maybe you would have had more planes,
But the concentration is in the south of England.
And it was just very crowded.
It's going to be somewhat like that.
So to me, making those spaces a little bigger, I liked the colors. I thought the production was very good. The cards were good. You said you thought maybe they should be rounded.
Yeah, I prefer round, just because when you shuffle in cards and stuff, having a point, that's like the most nitpicky thing. But if I'm not going to... And these are really awkward size to sleeve.
They're, very small.
You got to sleeve that size, but...
They're like Fantasy Flight cards. They have a lot of those little cards.
Yeah, but I think those ones are a lot longer.
A little longer.
I don't know. But yeah, it's just some little nuances that would really make it like...
Yeah.
This would be like a really, really, really awesome production. It's obviously still a really, really nice game. And the game is very fun to play, but, in a second edition, I'm like... There's just 2 inches of space here that could be cut off, just because it was quite big on the table.
Well, and it created a play area where I couldn't put my elbows on the table. It was hard for me to lay my phone down. Things like that. I thought the rule book was pretty good. I thought it was laid out fairly clearly.
It was very clear. Everything was in there that needed to be.
Yeah.
That was something I actually really enjoyed. I was pretty impressed.
Yeah.
It was just like great rule book, easy to learn. It's quite big. But really, that's deceptive. The text is huge, and half of this is like history and
there are some pictures
and stuff.
As far as gameplay, I thought this was very interesting.
Yeah, you just go through the few phases that you do, where you just kind of set everything up. Germans move, RAF moves, do your combats.
Yeah,
and then it's basically done. You do
Yep.
that 4 times, and the game's over. So I felt like it went along at a good clip. The slowest part of the game was me as the Germans
Planning.
trying to. You draw those mission cards, and it's assigning who goes where, who's trying to do what, because you're trying to pick enough prime targets where you can do it quickly and get them done, and then it's, well, I knock out some radar stations, I'll use this guy to try and filter through a turn late, and so there's a little bit of planning with that, and I'm someone who's got to think everything through, so I'm like, oh, okay, getting that going, but...
I didn't think that was too bad. I mean, I think round 3, it was a lot longer than some of the other rounds, but we had started to figure the game out, and I think you understood what you were trying to do better.
Yeah.
I also liked, there were quite a few mission cards.
There's a ton of them.
I think there's still probably 20 that you didn't see, right?
I think it's more than that.
Maybe 25 or 30.
Yeah.
So I think the replayability is high on this one.
Very
You're
much
not
so.
going to see the same targets, the same concentration. I think that's good. Even in your stacks, here's your Luftflotte 2. You had quite a few cards that hadn't come up.
The majority of them had
Right.
come up.
And we actually looked through them and we felt like, there were a lot of BF-109s in there.
Yeah.
That might have made a little difference had they been shuffled in differently.
Yeah, all my fighters are like in my combat ready stacks.
Right.
And I was just like flying naked with just bombers in the beginning. I'm like, this is great.
So I really feel like this game, while it's tough for the Germans, I think it's very doable. I think your victory conditions and getting the VP is very doable. And I think that's a good thing in a game like this, because we all know we don't want to play those games where it's like, oh, the British are going to get destroyed for 5 rounds and then they'll turn around and have some chance. I felt like I had a good chance in this. I felt like you had a good chance.
Well, the game's short enough where you don't feel that way, which is good.
Right.
And to me, a game where you have scores as high as, it was 39 to 37. When you get scores that high but that close, that's a well-balanced game.
You're right.
There's enough dice rolling and card pulling where it all kind of evens out at the end.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoyed that, and I saw that in this game, and I think that's a credit to the designers. Well,
and we talked about it. Literally, 1 more damage in London would have given you 1 more point, plus you would have completed that mission for another point. That's 2 points, the game's tied.
Yeah.
Then it's kind of a crapshoot. So, very close. Very, very close.
Yeah, that's, I had a blast playing this one. I'll always give a Battle of Britain game a good try.
Yeah.
And this one's fun because you get to push pieces around on the board. It's not just counters and stuff.
And there's cool minis. Yeah.
I always like stuff like that. So,
one other comment I had, and this is something we both, this kind of is a bucket of dice game.
Yeah.
Great dice. They're custom dice with rondelles and iron crosses. There's only 6 of them. Often I was rolling 9, 10, 11 dice. And it's very hard to keep in your mind because you have to track both your own hits and hits against your own symbol.
yeah.
So it's a matter of not having enough dice. I felt like throw me 6 dice extra in there and charge me an extra $3 or $4, and that's just a nitpicky thing. But great dice.
Yeah, it's fun. Love chucking the dice, but I want more dice to chuck.
Yeah.
That is, it's almost criminal way. Like, just put more dice.
Yeah,
in the
but
game.
4 more dice I think would have covered 90% of the times that we had to roll.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's a nitpicking thing, but overall, very good game. I would like to play this again.
Yeah, the gameplay itself is fun.
Yeah.
There's more scenarios to play, which change up the initial setup. What's some things
Conditions.
start off damage,
Yeah.
lose some planes, and so you're kind of fighting it already at a disadvantage to kind of get it going immediately off the bat. So that's always fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this game. A lot of replayability, as you said, and that's something that I'm like, yeah, you're never gonna have a game that's the same twice.
Right.
And
right.
I don't think I wouldn't feel like it's scripted in that way, which is nice.
Because there's so many different missions and targets, so yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that's been Battle of Britain from PSC Games, Plastic Soldier Company Games. This one's available for purchase. Go ahead, order it if you're interested. I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. And we've been theplayersaid.com.